Evening, everyone. Welcome to those who are in our studio audience at Village Hall and those joining us online. It's October 18th, 2023. We have two bits of business. The big item is the public hearing for Chapter 126, Vehicles and Traffic, and 127, the Residential Parking Program. And then we have some bits and bobs of board business that we'll address after. So first, I'd like to say that I'm really glad that we're all here tonight. The village has been contemplating some form of metering during busy weekends for a very long time. In fact, Laura found an article from a 1989 New York Times article, an article from the New York Times titled, "If You're Thinking About Living in Cold Spring." And the quote is, "Many Cold Spring residents complain about the lack of curbside parking, especially on weekends when visitors take up the relatively few available spots. Mayor Antonia P. Garuffi, one of our three female mayors, says the village is considering installing parking meters, but has not yet figured out how to let residents park near their homes while limiting tourist parking." So these many years later, with the help of many volunteers, including two former trustees who are in the room tonight, we figured it out, or at least what we think is our best shot at getting it right. And I see a couple folks who sat on previous iterations of the parking committee. Hello, Rebecca Ramirez and Dan Valentine. So we know that vehicles and traffic and parking are really touchy topics for visitors, as for villagers and for visitors. It's stressful, in fact, but doing nothing just isn't an option anymore. We're also aware that there's been a lot of buzz around the village about what's actually in these proposals and what the proposals mean for residents. There seems to even have been something of a concerted effort to spread misinformation. So we're going to start with facts. Trustee Starbuck will briefly walk us through the proposed modifications to the VNT chapter and the parking chapter, and then we'll turn the floor to you. We'll want to know what you think of the proposals and hear any ideas that you have for making the draft chapters better before adoption. So here are the ground rules. If you want to speak tonight and you're in the room, please sign in. If you're joining us online, when it comes time, raise your hand. We'll recognize village residents and business owners in the room first, in the order that they signed in, and then those online. And then we'll move to Phillipstown residents and our neighbors in Nelsonville, and any business owners from those areas. First here in the room, then online. And lastly, we'll recognize anyone else wishing to speak specifically on the topics related to these two code chapters. Speakers will have 3 minutes each. And for the sake of hearing as many people as possible, we do ask that if your comments are grammatical or related to format, please submit those in writing to the clerk, and stick to substantive comments if you can, please. We'll take public comment until 9, and then we'll see where we are. If we need to continue the public hearing, we can make a motion and vote to do that. And then we'll do our board business starting at 9. So I will hand the floor to Trustee Starbuck. And thanks for preparing this for all of us tonight.
It's a pleasure. So I put together a presentation that kind of offers the meat of the amendments that we are proposing. And this is kind of our Cliff's Notes version to hopefully make it a little bit easier for everyone to understand what's being proposed. So we've been working, as the mayor said, we've been working towards implementing a parking plan for well over 15 years. The plan was created by committed residents, and it addresses the growing shortages of parking for residents on the residential side streets around Main Street. And it also ensures that parking on Main Street turns over regularly while earning much needed revenue from tourism, which we don't currently have really any other outlets for. Here's just a quick reminder of what the residential permit plan was that was designed by the parking committee. The village parking committee put forth a proposal in 2021. It was vetted by villagers. There were multiple public meetings, and they took comments, they considered them, they evolved, they worked really hard on this. And eventually it was accepted by the previous Board of Trustees. These code updates will enact the parking committee's recommendations and allow the village to implement the plan that they set forth. In addition, the current trustees have taken steps to improve crosswalk safety, and currently our crosswalks are not up to compliance with state laws. Things like setbacks are not the right size for sightlines, so we'll address that in these chapter updates. So what are the revisions to chapter 126 vehicles and traffic? We'll start there first and then we'll do the chapter 127. So the resident permit parking is outlined in chapter 126's updates, and there's a list of the areas where residential parking permits will be required. Again, it references all of the locations that are on that map that the parking committee presented. So these are all the streets. It's not the whole street. It's 20% is for open public, and then the rest will be resident permits.
For clear, 80% is residents and
So-
20% is required.
Thank
under
you, yes.
New York state law. for public
So
parking.
just of note, the permit holders are not restricted to parking on their own streets or right in front of their house. They can park in any of the resident permit parking areas listed above where there is signage. Also, permits will be available to residents of these streets, in addition to a couple other streets. So if your street isn't listed on here and your street will be affected by the immediate sort of plan around Main Street, then most likely your street will be included. Parking meters on Main Street. So we're adding that, and the meters will be in effect on weekends and holidays from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. All of the rest of the week, the parking is free, but we are limiting it to 3 hours from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays. And there'll be 3 ways to pay. You can pay with the meter kiosks that we hope to install, by Park Mobile app, which is currently being used at the municipal lots on Fair Street, or by phone. You can literally dial in and call and pay with a credit card number. And the parking rate will be $4 an hour. Jeff, there's one other bullet point that's being cut off at the bottom of the screen. Is there any way to fix that? You know?
I don't, it's
Maybe
in
not.
presentation mode, so I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Keep going.
Arrow down.
Just seems to. Well,
Or you can tell us what the third bullet is. Sorry, a moment.
Oh, I'm looking at your slides. It's just says
Okay.
park for up to 3 hours at a time.
There you go. Okay, thank you.
Laura.
I'm afraid it's not. Okay, so, next is improved crosswalk safety. As I mentioned earlier, we're making larger no parking areas, which will provide wider sight lines at crosswalk zones and traffic intersections to keep pedestrians safer. By state law, it needs to be 30 feet from crosswalks at the light intersection at 9D and Main Street, and 20 feet from crosswalks elsewhere where there's cars coming towards the crosswalk. Okay, come on. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so we're also working, oops, went too far. Can you go back?
Hey, Jeff, I can't. put the mouse.
Okay, there we go. So we're reducing congestion in key locations. There's a couple locations where villagers have complained in the past that traffic is untenable at certain hours. One of them is on Locust Ridge, when the buses come through. It's actually turned into a one-way street, but we're just gonna change it to a one-way street continually. It's a narrow street with parking on both sides. So this will reduce the congestion there. The other is on Railroad Avenue, which has been having issues with trucks, but also another narrow street that will be less difficult to have two cars if there's only one direction. And then no parking on one side of the street on East Belvedere Street. These are all sort of narrow streets where it's a two-way street, but if cars are parked on both sides, two cars cannot get through. So Furnace Street, Haldane Street by the Tots Park, where we've all probably experienced that. Hamilton Street and Maple Terrace. And then extended no parking in areas where sight lines are difficult when cars are coming out, for instance, on either side of Wall Street hitting 9D, from St. Mary's exit to the Dunkin' Donuts entrance, and then Locust Ridge on both sides at the corner of Mountain Avenue where the buses turn. And then Furnace Street at the corner of Wall Street where cars tend to park around that corner oddly, and you can't really see what's coming and going.
Eliza, just for clarification, you have East Belvedere Street here. I think you mean West Belvedere.
Okay, I will make note of that. Okay, so parking time on Main Street will be reduced from 4 hours to 3 hours. And this is something that was recommended by the parking committee to increase the turnover. And we're adding more free 15-minute parking spaces on Main Street. Now, the previous board did add these to the code, but they weren't implemented on the street. We're adding one more down at Depot. But this just ensures that there's one spot on the north side of every block in the business district of Main Street so that people can drive down from wherever they are, stop for 15 minutes, run into a shop and grab what they need and go. And that has already, in the places that were already in the code are really helping. Increasing ADA parking access. We already had a couple spots on Main Street. We're adding a third one up by the florist shop at the corner of Furnace. And also we're making sure their municipal lot complies with New York State laws in terms of the amount of ADA parking. There should be 2 spots at that lot, and currently there's 1. And then we're improving the street marking, so you'll see the blue squares so that it's really clear that those are ADA spots. Establishing and enforcing a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit on village streets. This is something the village has been wanting to do for a long time. It was not enabled by the state until just recently in August. The governor enacted a law that allows local municipalities to reduce the speed to 25 on non-state roads. So it's still 30 on 301 and on 9D, but all of our village small streets will be 25 miles an hour, and we can now enforce it. We're also updating the code chapter to allow us to reclaim underutilized village property to provide much needed parking and revenue to the village. So this lot down on New Street is currently rented by Hudson Hills, and we're looking to Hudson House, sorry, and we're looking to sort of update the contract so that it turns into a shared lot that we can also meter potentially. So we got a request from the fire department to increase the radius space on Church Street. So when their truck that comes out of the side there comes out, right now they have to like back in and back out to turn that corner. And so we're giving them another parking spot basically so that they can come out in one quick pull and not have to slow them down on their way to an emergency. We're also prohibiting tour buses on residential side streets. So right now there are no laws on the books that say that can't happen or that they can't drive down your street. And we are limiting their passageway to the state truck route, which is Fair Street, 90 and Main Street. And we're also prohibiting them from parking anywhere for, more than just a drop off on those roads. They may park at the sort of bus parking spot on Chestnut Ridge Chestnut Street, right across from the Chestnut Ridge Apartments, with a time limit of 3 hours.
Which is an already established bus spot, parking spot, just hasn't been utilized.
Yeah, nobody knows about it, so. There were a number of concerned citizens saying that they have sort of abandoned cars on their blocks that just never move. So, in order to address that issue, we've made a new time limit on street parking that will prevent long-term storage of vehicles. So after 14 days, cars will be removed and stored at the owner's expense going forward. And then we're improving enforcement. We've made clear enforcement directives, and we're increasing fines on parking violations. So that's it for chapter 126. 127, the resident parking program. We've outlined who is eligible for the resident parking permits, and the residents of these streets are eligible. This list includes the people on the west side of the tracks that currently get permits, and also all the people on the new sort of parking district. And that includes Fair Street and Main Street residents as well. And then how many resident parking permits may eligible households have. So this was something that was a part of the parking committee's recommendations, that single-family residences with a driveway and legal units in multifamily properties receive 1 permit per unit, or single-family residences with no driveways receive up to 2 permits. We've also outlined the permit application and renewal process. The current chapter 126 doesn't really have any explanation for how it goes if you go and apply for the permit. So we've provided the information of what the applicants must provide, a driver's license, the vehicle license plate, 2 documents with proof of residence. The permit fees we've adjusted to be $75 for a single permit. For those households that are only eligible for 1, for households that are eligible 2, the first permit would be $50, the second permit would be $75. And we've decided to propose that the permit goes for 1 year, and it starts in January and renews in December, but we would prorate it. So if a new resident, for instance, moved in August, they could pay for the months of August to December, and then they would renew it for the next year. We've included where to affix your permit. So there it is, right near your parking or your car registration. Temporary parking permits. So if you have contractors, plumbers, electricians, home aides, or guests coming to your house, you can come to the village clerk and ask for parking permit for a certain amount of time. You just sort of let him know, and that'll allow them to come and do their work or stay with you for that period of time. So FAQs, some questions that people have been asking. What if I live in a resident permit parking area and have more than 2 cars and need more parking? There are always households that are gonna have, teenagers in the house or multiple adults. And that's totally understandable. This permit program is in an effort to distribute a scarce public resource, which is parking, in a way that satisfies most residents' needs. For those who need a greater allotment, many public parking spaces will remain in the resident parking permit area. By state law, we're required to leave 20% of the spaces free or available to the public, which amounts to about 74-ish spaces. And those must be kept available for parking without a permit. So every street area will be about within a block of those spots. So if you have an extra car, you can always park on Northern Avenue or at the ends of your block.
And also the areas outside of the resident parking.
Of course,
Permit.
where anyone can park. So what if I live outside the resident parking permit area? Won't this plan push more cars to park on my street? The current measures are a first step in an evolving strategy to address parking in the entire village. After the current measures are implemented, the trustees will assess the effects and propose modifications to the public. The trustees encourage feedback from the community members to guide future planning. So we had discussed this in our tourism planning earlier this year, that this is sort of a larger view of the whole village and how we expect the parking plan to evolve as we implement stage one. We expect that we'll need to address areas in stage two and eventually possibly stage three. And really what will guide those processes is comments and feedback from all the residents who, as we get this going, kind of tell us what problems are popping up or what could be improved. So we're hoping that we'll get everybody's cooperation and support with that.
And another point of clarity, if we could go back, stay there for a second. We do, the New York State Assembly and the Senate did pass enabling legislation. It was signed by the governor to allow us to establish resident parking permits in those colored areas. But at this point, we're focused on stage one. So although we're enabled to expand into stage two and stage three areas, we're not doing that at this time. We're sort of seeing how this goes in stage one and then reassessing and making decisions going forward from there.
Right, and also it should be noted that the parking committee put a ton of time and research and thought into stage one, and our highway department is, working around all the time on getting signage and things like this. So to do the whole village at once would be a really big lift, and doing it piece by piece is something a little bit more manageable for us. So our parking storage and our shortage and the costs of tourism continue to grow. The village has a lot to lose by not implementing this plan, and a lot to gain if we can implement it successfully. Parking meter revenue is expected to add to hundreds of thousands of dollars to the annual village budget. Resident permit parking will provide villagers with convenience and ease of parking near their homes, and will remove competition for street parking on residential blocks from hikers and Main Street customers. And last, parking on Main Street will turn over more frequently, supporting the vibrance and sustainability of the business district. So everyone will have to give up a little something to get something if this is to work. That's a quote from Jack Goldstein, the former parking committee member and planning board chair. And I think that's kind of what we're hoping everyone is willing to do. It isn't going to be comfortable. I think we're all going to have to sort of readjust our habits with parking. But the goal is to support everybody and to make this work better for all of our villagers. And so I hope that everybody can be patient with it. And again, just provide feedback if it's not working, because that will be important for us to make it work better in the future. And that's it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so it looks as if there's some folks who joined us since. Just to review, we're going to start in the room with village residents in the room. Then we'll go to village residents online, and then Nelsonville and Phillipstown neighbors in the room and online, and then anybody else who'd like to speak. So I guess, Jeff, you have the list to call people in order, and 3 minutes per person.
That's on the list.
Hi, Fran, welcome back.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Hold on one second.
I have a very brief one and a little bit more, and that's it. And I will be quick. Fran Murphy from 5 High Street. My comments, some of them may, and I know Kathleen said in the beginning, not to do grammatical, but as I go through, I apologize if something is a little grammatical. I'm up for that. Okay, let's start with 126 and the definitions, the parking meter space definition. That definition is unclear. It says any space within a parking meter zone as a parking meter kiosk are located in an area. It's like I'm in the middle of, I don't know what, there's something missing in that definition. Catherine's looking at me. That's the way the definition reads for parking meter space. So it feels like something is missing in there. Okay, the definition for through streets basically says if, and quote, vehicular traffic from intersecting streets is required by law to stop. And then it says stop signs must be erected. And then why does it say and where stop signs are erected? I assume that if a through street and traffic is required to stop, stop signs will be erected. So saying and stop, and if a stop sign is erected, sort of sounds like you're adding an additional requirement that shouldn't be there. I mean, it should be understood that if it's by law, the stop sign should be there. Okay. 12610, and I have a copy of this, so as you're scribbling, I can pass Kathleen a copy of this.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I can also give Jeff one.
That's the better option, yeah.
Okay, I can give Jeff one. On 12610, and let me just flip through for a second. The first sentence of the definition is incomplete. It says the maximum speed at which vehicles may proceed on or along any that are not state roads, on or along what? A street, a road, there's a word missing. Okay. 126.18.4a. My question is, how will the buses entering the village know where they can and cannot pass over or disembark? Where is the signage going to go as these tour buses come in the village? And this is all new to them. And I'm looking at the time going fast. And another point on this, Fair Street is one way with parking on one side on Saturday evenings and Sundays until 6. And so buses should not be allowed to disembark on Fair Street during those hours, because that'll be a disaster. 126.18.4b, if the area designated as bus parking, why are we allowing trucks and oversized vehicles to park there, as it says on 126.42? That's the area in Chestnut Street. Couple of other things, my questions as to when will the residents see the master fee schedule, metered hours and fees, days of operation, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just a question as to when. 126.28, Locust Ridge, then the third column, should the third column read entire length and then amended, which it doesn't. Railroad Avenue, there are no clear signs on Main Street, or will there be clear signs on Main Street? Oh, please, give me another one.
Thank you. You can, I see you have it all in writing, right?
I do.
Excellent. Jeff will take it. Thank you.
It was the fastest 3 minutes I ever lived.
It was great. Thank you very much. Jeff, who's on the,
Marie Early.
Marine Raleigh Granby Terrace, 126-18, 2C2A. Crosswalk is specified as being between 81 and 91 Main Street. Between those two addresses are 83, 85, 87, and 89, 91 Main Street. So the addresses in text being limited and more specific. 126.18 2C2I, neither 157 nor 159 Main Street can be found in the Putnam County Online Database. 161 Main Street is on the south side of Main Street to the east of Furnace Street. 155 Main is on the south side to the west of Furnace Street. 126.18.4a. In reading this section, it appears as if tour buses are permitted on Terrace Street, but not on Main Street west of Route 9D. Is that correct? 126.18.4b. There is no street named Chestnut Ridge. 126.18.6b. Please identify the location of the municipal lots. One 126.32. The two rows for Railroad Avenue indicate stop signs at both the east and west ends of the street. However, if Railroad Avenue is being designated as a one-way street eastbound, there should only be the need for one stop sign on that street. 126.35. There is a new law prohibiting parking on the west side of Chestnut Street from Wall Street. Why is parking prohibited in this area? 126.35. This new row refers to 33 Chestnut Street. There is no 33 Chestnut Street. There's 25 and 27, 37, 39. What is meant by that address? 123.35. The fourth entry for Church Street has a phrase 40 feet X off area. What does that mean? 126.35. Why is there no parking planned on the north side of East Belvedere Street? I thought that East Belvedere was a private street. As such, I don't see how the village has jurisdiction over parking on that street.
you're correct, Marie. That should be west. You're correct.
It should be removed.
No, it should be west, not east.
West Belvedere.
West Belvedere, not east. Sorry, carry on. I don't want to take your time.
You already did. Why is there 135-35? 126-35? Why is there no parking planned on the north side of Hamilton Street? By the way, there is a severely handicapped gentleman who lives on the north side of Hamilton Street. I thought that Hamilton Street was a private street. As such, I don't see how the village has jurisdiction. 126-35 on the fifth row from Main Street. Wouldn't 25 east for crosswalk be in the roadway? 126-35 on the 13th row from Main Street. What does east for 25 feet, 20 feet plus crosswalk mean?
Thank you.
I have 6 pages, I'll leave you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Much appreciated, Maria.
We have the list.
Dawn?
Can I make my comment from here or should I come up?
Sure. Okay, really comfortable.
So a lot of this looks very set and I do applaud all of the hard work. And I remember being on a Zoom meeting with Jack. And somebody asked about the timing, the times that the permits would be enforced. And so I wrote this down. I really look at the traffic around my house and I live on a corner in the village. I wrote, we definitely get visitors at all times of the week in Cold Spring, especially in the fall. But I watch traffic carefully from my home on a side street in Cold Spring Village. And I have noted that parking gets tight at very specific times between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Saturdays, Sundays, and holiday Mondays from about April through November. I hope that our parking passes can reflect that limited window of time because I don't want to ask my friends or aging parents to get a pass every time they come by on a Wednesday afternoon. Also, Andrea Hudson requested that if Craigside Drive becomes a one-way street, the flow is from west to east, not east-west. And I heard that you're just going to be two ways and restrict parking. But if the decision, Haldane, I'm sorry, Haldane. If Haldane becomes a one-way street, she made a really excellent, okay, I just wanted to make sure. And my last thing is a question. Is who benefits from the parking revenue? Is it the county or is it the village?
The village.
That's really helpful to know. Thanks, that's it.
Would you mind, we had some very specific times, et cetera. Would you mind turning it to Jeff so we have it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for typing us your comments.
That's very
Don't
helpful.
know how much.
Is there anyone else in the room?
Yeah, hi, Tara Vamos, 6 Rock Street. So first of all, just a giant thank you to everyone over all of the years who's worked on parking stuff. I'm thrilled this is getting done. I think it's brilliant. I'm sure there might be problems that come out and I have full confidence in the board to address them when they inevitably have some little blips. I'm curious what the cost of a annual permit will be. I'm wondering why have them start in January instead of just letting them be spaced out over time and make it less of a lift administratively and just have the date written on it so that you just have it a year from whenever you purchase it. I am curious if the overflow parking, and I don't even know if that's like really a thing, but it'll become a thing for my family for sure with this system. Is the parking that's down by the Marathon Battery area, is that still just sort of like open season parking, like you could leave your car there for 2 weeks? My other question is really weird, which is I'm really short. I wish that you could put the sticker somewhere else besides the bottom left-hand corner right in front of the driver's face. I hate that
Good to know.
already. I wish it could go up or even better over to the other side of the windshield.
Very practical concern. Other questions? Two things very quickly, just for clarity. The question of, we bounced around the idea of when to make permits applicable and when to have them expire. The request from the police department was that it be on a single calendar so that everyone expires at the same time and the color changes all at the same time. It's easier for them from an enforcement perspective. It was they who asked for the positioning. That we can certainly point that out.
It could be the top.
It could be the top that works for you. They just need to be able to see it from their vehicle.
Yeah.
So
Also for the cost of the permits, it's, if you have a driveway and you can have one permit, it's $75. If you have no driveway, you can get two. The first one is $50 and the second one is 75. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else signed up in the room?
Nope. Okay.
So we'll go to village residents online.
You can put
And
your
you
hand
put
up.
your hand up if you want to speak from Zoom land. I see Mr. Lusardi. Hi.
Hold on.
Oh, you're
You're on
muted.
Jane, unmute yourself, please.
Oh,
You're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
yeah,
Yes.
loud and clear.
I have a brand new laptop, which I'm getting to know here. Anyway, not that that's an excuse, but anyway, quickly, thank you very much for leaving Haldane Street two-way. I appreciate that. And I know other people do too, because I watch the traffic flow all the time. Thank you for making it one-way. I mean, one side of the street parking, and that'll help greatly. The only thing I don't understand is you said Haldane Street, the resident gets one RPP. I thought that the designation of Haldane Street was an open street for parking. So if that is the case, why would I need an RPP unless the RPP would allow me to park on High Street if for some reason I couldn't use my driveway due to repair or whatever it needed. But people who know me know I always use my driveway unless I'm having it repaved or something like that. So would I need an RPP or not?
Not for Haldane Street, because that is part of the 20% that's free and available, so you could
Okay.
park there at any time, and it is correct, if you wanted to park on High Street, you would need a permit so that you can park over there.
The other thing I understood, I read the whole proposal over, and Route 9D in front of my house and all the way around the park and Northern Avenue is open, if I understood correctly, open parking. So if I had guests come, they could park in front of my house, or if the park had a number of people there, they could park on Route 9D. Okay,
Correct.
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excuse me, he's not a resident.
I'm sorry, you don't have the floor right now, Marie. Excuse me, you don't have the floor right now.
Yeah. He just made
So,
a statement
excuse
that
me,
he's
you
like-
don't have the floor, Ms. Early. Who is next online next to speak? On Zoom? Does anyone else want to speak? Danny?
Dan Valentine.
Thank you. Glad to see this moving along. I just had a couple points. One, the sticker on the windshield in the parking committee. We discussed the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law prohibits placing any stickers on the windshield that's not approved by the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles. So we were opting for the hanging tag in place of that. Plus, it would make it easier for residents with multiple vehicles. If they had to park a vehicle on the street, they could do that. The other thing was the actual fee for the permit. It's not that expensive, but it's kind of high. And this whole permit program is driven by tourism coming to our village. I'm not sure why we're charging the residents $75 to park in front of their house. Maybe it could be lowered to $50 for each permit, or 50 and 25 or something like that. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Dan, we'll follow up on the windshield placement. That was the recommendation of the officer in charge, so we'll make sure that that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other village residents? Oh, sorry. There we go. I see Mr. Smith with his hand raised. You have to unmute yourself.
I think I got it. I got it. Can
Yep,
you hear me?
we got it.
We live at 162 Main Street and we have 2 apartments. Therefore, there are 3 cars. We do have a driveway, but it won't accommodate 3 cars juggling back and forth. Would we be able to get a 3rd permit?
If you have 2 apartments within the building, you can only get 2 permits.
is it possible to change that? That makes it very difficult for all our residents.
Are there three legal units in your property? or two?
Yes, 3 legal
Oh,
units.
then you would get 3 permits for the building. You get 1 per,
That's what I needed to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you.
Rebecca Ramirez has her hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Rebecca Ramirez, 13 Church Street. I want to just say thank you to Eliza for working and spearheading this work. I'm very happy to see, I'm happy to see that there was a new pole implemented on my street today. Thank you also to Fran and Marie that are in the room, taking a look at that code and bringing your institutional knowledge to the collaborative process. I appreciate that. I had a question about the kiosks. Will that accept cash and coins? I know it's, much easier to pay with a phone and a credit card, but I'm just curious about that, just in terms of how are we making our Main Street accessible to others?
So it will be credit card only, just because of the labor of collecting cash and coins and the possibility for vandalism.
Okay. And then my last question was I just had a question in regards to how it changed from like a 2-hour limit to a 3-hour limit. If you could provide a little bit of information regarding, how that decision came to happen.
So the recommendation from the parking committee was that it's 2 hours with the option of adding a 3rd hour. And so we've summed it up as 3 hours because it is, but it's still that same structure. So when you go to the kiosk or you go to pay, you can purchase 2 hours. And then if you need a 3rd hour to renew, you may do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't see, it looks like maybe Nicole with the letter N. Hi.
Yeah.
You're not muted, but we don't, there you go.
Yeah, a question which is, when will you be considering comments submitted? I wanted to know when you're going to consider comments that were submitted prior to this in writing.
Nicole, we can't hear you. Is it possible for you to put your question in the chat and the clerk can read it out? You're very broken up. Can you put your question in the chat? And we'll come back to you.
Sorry, I'm not
back to the question.
My question is written comments that were submitted.
Oh, do we
have, yes, they've been distributed. I don't know what she's asking.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Yeah, Nicole, no, we will not be reading written comments into the record tonight. They'll be made part of the record for everything for the board to consider. So your comments, there have been a number of written comments received, and the board has all those for their consideration as they continue to address the chapters.
Yep, I actually copied you today when they were shared around to the Board of Trustees and to the clerk, and then they'll be part of the record from tonight's hearing as well. I see a repeat hand with James, but is there anyone who has not yet made a comment who wishes to comment? Jesse?
Thanks. Jesse St. Charles, 13 Fair Street. First, thanks for all the hard work from everyone, both now and in the past. I guess a couple comments and then a question. So one, I'm really excited about the improved sight lines at intersections. Fair Street and Main is very hard to turn on, and we have to do it regularly. So excited to see that improved. You mentioned a change in the village speed limit and being able to enforce that a little bit better. I was curious, on Fair Street, we have pretty regularly speed issues with people come because it's a main entrance and exit. Primarily people coming into the village go quite fast. Is there any parts of this that will enable better enforcement on speed, or is that out of scope for this? And then finally, a comment just saying that I think that there are advantages and flexibility of having a hanging permit versus a sticker, not just for visibility and but also like for those that have more than one car, but maybe have to park different ones on the street at different times. That gives some flexibility about switching if needed. And that's it. Thanks.
Thanks. I can address your question about speed. So Fair Street is a village road. So we now, because of the governor's enabling legislation from August 2022, have the capacity to have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit there. The places where we can't are the state roads. So Main Street above the light and Chestnut and Morris or 9D are at 30, except around the school zones where they're 25. They can be 25. So there are old signs around the village that say 15, which our police officers couldn't enforce because the state vehicle and traffic code did not match that. So now we can enforce at 25 with appropriate signage. And there are some scattered 25-mile-an-hour signs around. But it's a matter of becoming consistent with the signage. Dan Dillon?
Dylan?
Yeah, thanks for hosting this, Kat. My question is, how does a homeowner handle as far as like service providers? You know, we got electricians, plumbers, you got someone coming to do your lawn, you got snow removal. How do they get handled? Because we can't get permits for them.
Well, first, are you talking about your property on?
Well, I know my property is not involved yet. I live on Paulding Avenue, but eventually it may be. But I'm talking about any homeowner, even in town, who has somebody come who's an electrician or needs a plumber or.
Yeah, go ahead, Eliza.
So, as part of the plan, if you have somebody coming in like that, you can come to Village Hall and request a temporary hang tag from the clerk and just say when you need it for, and he'll date it and give it to you, and you can pass it to your home aide or your electrician or your plumber.
Or they can come.
Yeah, or they can come and request one.
So we can request that at any time? I mean, because we don't know what, I mean, they tell me they're gonna be here between 10 and 4, for example.
But you could get one for the week, it
Oh,
doesn't have to
okay,
be
okay.
so specific, but we just need a set, date
Yeah,
for
okay.
when you need it, and we'll give you one so that you can let them come and it'll be easy.
And what about unexpected guests? I mean, again, I'm not involved now, but I'm sure there are people out there. I mean, my family visits could, all of a sudden they show up. I mean,
Remember that 20% of resident parking areas must be reserved for free public parking. So there will be portions of all of the resident parking districts that are dedicated to free public parking that can be used by guests. So it might not be right in front of your house, but it will be within a zone, within the zone nearby.
okay.
It's a habit change for all of us. It will
Yeah.
be for all of us. And again, at this point, we're only implementing the center portion of the district. If we look at that zone map.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Okay. I'm just looking for the future.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
Plus, I'm sure there's people in town that have the same.
Absolutely. That's been one of the big questions.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I don't see any hands up online. Okay, anyone else in the room? Going once, going twice? Mrs. DeMayo?
Hi, Maria DeMayo, 41 Garden Street. Do you have any plans to actually mark off parking spaces?
I'm talking down by where I live at Garden Street, between 30 and 32 Garden Street, you can fit 3 cars. People have been parking off center where you can only put 2 cars. Then on the other side, in front of 34 Garden Street, both my neighbor and I can fit our cars. When we're not there, you always get the smallest little car that parks right smack in the middle, where you're only gonna be able to put 1 car, and I have pictures.
We don't have a plan to mark off parking spaces on side streets at this point, but your comments noted for the record.
Yeah, and I would also say that, there, I anticipate that when we implement the resident parking permit and suddenly there's no tourist parking there and there's no Main Street customers parking there, your street's gonna have more spots in general. So even if people are not considerate or efficient parkers, which we all see and it's annoying, there will be more spots available overall. So hopefully even those kind of problems will be not as bad.
That was the goal in removing the striping on Main Street, to allow flexibility for different sizes of cars, et cetera. So that's why now you see the marks on the outside, along the lane side, but not in between. And that was a recommendation that went back to the comprehensive plan on Main Street.
Okay, most of the residents are pretty considerate. It's every once in a while, though, you will get one that will park right smack in the middle and you can't get another car in there. And that's a busy area.
Yeah.
We need every space that we can get.
Hopefully that'll be improved.
Thank
I'll
you.
let you know.
Thank you.
It's no do. We're all gonna see how it goes. Hi.
I'm John Moranthi. I just want to piggyback on what Danny Dillon, if you have somebody come to work at your house, is there a charge for that?
No.
And there's no limit, like there's a house on my street, I know we're not on it right now, they've been working there for a year. Or if you had a tree company come, it might be 3 or 4 trucks, so you have to get 3 or 4 tags or whatever.
So we're gonna have to be flexible
Yeah.
and sorting this out. It's true, when people have housework done, there might be one contractor, one company,
Right.
but 3 trucks that come with that company. Again, there'll be the available public parking, and then the passes.
Yeah, but if you make the request that you need it for, 6 months and for 3 vehicles, provided there's no major issue with that, we should be able to provide it to you.
I mean, we have to be able to live our lives and do the work we need to do in the village too. Let me just see if there's anybody who hasn't yet had a chance to make sure we've all had an opportunity before we. Okay, so there were, Fran had her hand up first, and then I'll come to you, and then where are we on time? Oh gosh, okay, go ahead, Fran.
Two fast comments. In the code on 12643, you list the streets for the resident parking and the times. It doesn't list days. Is it 7 days a week? Is it only on weekends? No place in the code that I find days for the resident parking permits.
So as per the parking committee's recommendation, it would be all days.
Okay, so-
7 days a week from the hours that are set in the
Okay, so
code.
as long as
Clarify
it's clear
it.
in the code.
Thank you.
And the other thing I heard this mentioned a couple of times from people on Zoom about hanging permits. In my mind, the permission to park belongs to the address, not the car. So, my car is not the one who has a permission. I have permission because I live on 5 High Street. So it should belong to the address and not necessarily attached to my car. So it should have something that's hanging that I can pass from car to car or whatever. And that's just, in my mind, logical, but that's up to you guys.
I mean, what among the concerns are transferability, right? And making sure that parking passes aren't getting passed on or sold or accidentally lost. But noted.
Okay, that was my other 2 comments.
Thank you. Tara, you.
Yeah, I would love it if it was a transferable tag because of being able to do things like hand it off to elderly guests and go put my car a couple blocks away somewhere. But I also just really, it keeps coming up like, what about the contractors, that kind of thing. And I used to work in New York City doing landscaping. I think that most contractors in this area do sometimes go to places where they don't have parking, they don't have building access. You put on the flashers, you unload your stuff and you move your car to whoever knows where you can park that's multiple blocks away. It's not something that any contractor really is like looking forward to doing, but they do have the ability to cope with that, especially if they have multiple vehicles. I doubt that they need every single vehicle there on site, or their trailer plus their thing. They can just unload it and go away. So, thank you.
Okay. Is it, do you want to read more from your list, or have you turned it? I'll recognize you, but if you've turned in your list, do you?
127.
Okay, go ahead, go for it. Yep.
127 3B. I believe the description of area B is incorrect. The description estimated will include Lung Terrace and Depot Square, because it says east of Metro North 2011. While the description east of Wall Street, Rock Street appears to be redundant with west of Chestnut Street, Morris Street. 127 3B2. The law that was signed by the governor on September 20th, 2015 did not include Fair Street or Main Street. See resolution number 232015 approved June 11th, 2015. Those two streets should be removed. Assuming that you choose not to do that, the question is, has any analysis been done as to how many potential additional permits may be requested by Fair Street and Main Street residents, and if they can be accommodated in the proposed RPP spaces? The analysis was not done for those two streets, which have a significant number of apartments. Lastly, the how will parking permits be, sorry, there's more. How will parking permits be handled when the multiple residence / apartment building with legal units has off-street parking? With a single residence, they are only permitted one parking permit. If it's an apartment building that has off-street parking, shouldn't that off-street parking be taken into consideration in terms of the number of permits that would be issued for that structure? I have others, but
That's a great point of clarification. On the matter of Main Street and Fair Street, it was erroneous that permits could not be issued for Main Street and for Fair Street
Residents.
for residents. We worked very hard with the village attorney to be clear on this issue. How we issue, those are the streets that are named as part of the district. The village has the opportunity to distribute the permits in the way that we see fit. And we see fit, this board sees fit, the inclusion of apartment dwellers on Main Street. Will there be enough? And Fair Street. Will there be enough? We're gonna find out.
My point is that the section that I referenced describes the law signed by the governor on September 25th, 2015. That law did not include Fair Street and Main Street.
We will make sure that the language is clear.
That's good.
The enabling legislation was related to the streets that could be included. What we're talking about is distribution of permits, but we'll make sure that that is clear. Yeah. Thank you very much, Marie.
Two different things. We're legally allowed to provide permits to anyone that we feel fit. Those streets that are listed in the state legislation are just where parking permits can be used. That's the difference.
What the streets that can be designated as part of the resident parking, so that no matter where I live, if I have a resident parking permit issued for zone 2, I can park in zone 2, whether I'm an apartment dweller or not. You'll remember that was a rub, was how do we equitably account for Main Street residents who don't have parking? Go ahead, Laura.
At least, this is at least my perspective on whether there are enough spaces, that it's a permit to be permitted to park. It's not an assurance that you will get a parking space, in the same way that today, sometimes you can't find a parking space on the streets because it's busy. And so we think that there, there's been analysis in the past. We think that there's enough, but there's no, you're permitted to park.
My point was, we did quite an analysis of the number of
Yeah.
homes and apartments and the number of RPP spaces on there.
Understood.
I'm guessing that the number of apartments and single-family residences on Main Street is almost equivalent to the number of single-family residences on the 11 side streets. So theoretically, you're doubling the number of people who are going to be looking to park on the 11 streets, while not increasing, in fact, decreasing some of the parking spaces. One of the points that I made in my write-up is that since the original analysis was done, there were more parking spaces striped off. For example, the firehouse parking space on Church Street. There have been more driveways that have been put in, eliminating parking spaces on the street. So the number of available RPP spaces has decreased.
Yeah.
While the number of potential RPP requests, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
could be potentially double.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just want to question something you just said, at least what I've heard. So if I live in the zone 2, I can only park in zone
No,
2?
that's not correct.
Okay, that's what I thought I heard you say, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry if that was not clear.
Okay.
Because we only have zone 2.
Right now, that's the only zone.
We only have one zone.
No,
So I
if
can
you,
park in any other zones.
right now, we have what is existing on Lower Main Street, and we are implementing the center portion of the village. Down the road, first of all, right now, you could, if you have a permit, you can park within your zone or on any other street that isn't designated resident parking only. And again, you're not required to park in front of your house. There's not a specific space for you. But you also, I know, that'd be amazing, right? You also have the capacity to, one of the things that the parking committee spent a lot of time talking about and thinking about, and I think, well, all of us are more aware of in the village, is that we do live in a walkable village. And, a lot of places would laugh at us saying, oh my God, I have to walk a minute and a half to get to my parking space. We don't have linear feet in front of each of our houses for all the cars people have. There isn't a shortage of parking. There might be a shortage of parking in front of your house. This is kind of the best case effort that the parking committee and its analysis put forward. We're gonna try.
I just wanted to clarify, because I
Yep.
thought it was, when you finish the whole village, we're not restricted to the zone we're in.
No. No, I mean, that would be an enforcement nightmare for the police, right? Different color, different zones. It's a small village. The resident parking will be the resident parking. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. So I will ask, board members, if you feel that, you feel confident that we have heard the public comment we need to be here. We can choose to keep the public hearing open for a period of days for written comment. We can choose to close it tonight. We can choose to continue to next week. How are folks feeling about hearing the public? So the next step is for us to obviously discuss what we've heard tonight.
I would offer that we should probably keep it open for written comments for sure. I mean, I think people now have seen a presentation. Things may occur to them that didn't before, and they should have the opportunity to chime in. So I would be open to that.
How long would you like to leave it open?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought about that part. I think a week is fair.
Yeah, I think 1 week to next
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the oral comment portion, you're suggesting that be closed, but that the written comment be left open
Yes.
for 7 days?
Yes.
Okay, so would you like to make that motion?
Sure. I will make a motion to keep the, how do I say this exactly? To keep the, public hearing open for written comments to next Wednesday, October 25th.
Second?
On the zoning. Did I not say that?
Yes, chapter 126 and 1.
I mean, you asked me. Come on.
All right, so what I'm hearing the motion to be
Yes.
is that we close the oral portion of the public hearing.
Yes,
And leave the written portion open for 7 days on chapter 126 and 127. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Better than I did, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much for coming out.
Yeah,
And we'll have public discussion. All needs to sink in. We need to summarize people's comments. We'll have public discussion again.
Thank you for your comments.
Very
Thanks
much.
for coming out tonight, everybody.
Okay, so the next part of our agenda is board business. A couple of things. We have proposals for access controlled security and doors at Village Hall, much needed security updates at Village Hall. There are two proposals. One is the maintenance contract for fobs for village employees and staff, and the other is for the access control integration and the technology side. Any discussion?
No, this is
so-
much needed. We really need to improve the security at Village Hall.
Okay, so we'll do two proposals. I would make a motion to accept, this is a state bid. A Plus Technology is a state bid company. Go ahead.
Oh, just do them all together as one.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would make a motion to accept the two bids from A Plus Technology and Security for the maintenance contract and hosted CCTV and access control integration. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Application for photo shoot. So Jeff, you dealt with the person making the application. It's a Volvo commercial.
It's not a commotion, it's a photo shoot.
It's a photo shoot, okay.
It's not a film commercial. It's for next Thursday. They picked up 4 or 5 locations throughout the village. Over here outside of Center Studios, down on the other side of the tracks where the former or the current dance studio is. On the corner of Cherry and 9D, and there was a couple of other locations throughout the village. They're quick, they're estimating 4 to 6 hours total in the village, and they'll be done. It's one day. The fee's $1,000 because the size of the crew, which is less than 10 people. I spoke to Larry. He would have an officer on duty specific for that, and they would be charged back for that. They did ask for if we could get arranged for a couple of parking spots in front of each location to be combed off. Larry will do his best, and other vehicles that have, they'll park either at one of the churches or they'll pay the municipal lot.
Okay. So in the email, it says they'll make arrangements with one of the churches for parking or go to the municipal lot. My suggestion would be that we approve it conditionally based on confirmation of what their parking plan is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Go ahead, Laura. Did
No,
you-
no, I guess I just have a question. Did they say, Jeff, if they're communicating with the residents? I mean, some of those are homes.
They're photographing from public rights of way.
Yeah.
Which they have the right. to do.
No, I recognize that. I recognize that they are allowed to do it. It's just, it's,
I had
it
the
would
same
be a
question,
nice
actually.
thing, like maybe you could flag that it would be appropriate for them to reach out, a courtesy to reach out to the residents.
It's really not up for the village. This is
Yeah.
between them and the resident. I do know they've reached out to the owners of Ascend. I don't know about the others. I will ask about that tomorrow, but
Okay.
I mean, as a rule of thumb, that's what they do
Okay.
regardless. So.
Yeah, it could just be a recommendation that they do.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And also just, people photograph buildings all
Understood,
the time,
yeah.
but I get it.
But the
I have
fact that
same
we're-
concern, Yeah.
That we have.
Rock Street.
Yeah.
Those wrecking leaves on the table.
Okay, so approval of minutes, 8, 9,
Vote on the photo shoot.
oh, we did, yeah.
We did.
I
My
seconded,
comment was after that.
Kathleen proposed the motion.
Yeah.
We all said yes.
With the request that they reach out to property owners as a courtesy. Okay, minutes, 8, 9, 23. Eliza, you missed this one, so the rest of us need to vote on this one. Any comments, changes at this stage? I think everyone reviewed it when Jeff sent it round. You have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? One abstention and,
Shout out to Karen for
oh, yes.
cleaning those up.
Well done, Karen. And the next is 9:13. Catherine was missing, so the rest of us will vote. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of September 13th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I realize I forgot, for anyone who's left on the call and in the audience, I forgot to make an announcement that Saturday is bulk pickup day. Which is so exciting on so many levels. Put your stuff out Friday night for Saturday pickup. Just as you put stuff out, please be mindful not to block public rights of way. Make sure people can get around your stuff on the sidewalk. We did have an inquiry today about whether there was a limit on what could be put out, and Royal said no. So put it out there and it will be gone.
Well, there's specific items that cannot be included.
Yeah, that is correct. On the village website and on the social media, there's a list of prohibited items, but you can put out among
As
the
much
class
as you want.
of acceptable items, you can put out as much as you'd like. Okay, who's got bills for tonight?
Motion to approve batch 7084 in the amount of $104,664.31.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Any further public comment, beyond the dog barking? Michael has a question.
Yeah, will Eliza's PowerPoint presentation be put up on the village website soon, the summary?
Yes, it'll be up there tomorrow morning.
Great, and it may not be a parking plan question per se, but will there be any increased signage or notification for the free parking at Metro North? Because I've noticed even on busy weekends, I've been surprised at the number of empty spaces there.
There will be. How about that for an answer?
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Just hanging out with us for a little extra time? Right on. Well, hearing no further comment, I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Nice to see you. Welcome home.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Got your extra space at the firehouse.
Thank you for that.
Every comment counts.
Were you at the